Hi everyone, we're so glad you've joined us here at Center for Brain Health for Sips in Science. Let's get started with a brief video underscoring the importance of brain health for you and for society. After that, we'll introduce our speaker.
We work, we live, we innovate and create. At the center of it all is your brain health. The ability to solve problems, think analytically, share empathy, and thrive.
We're trying to make brain performance really the next fitness revolution.
So how do you boost brain power? Welcome to the BrainHealth Project, an urgent call to transform your mind to work stronger and faster.
This is an absolute crisis, as great as any we have ever faced. We have to equip the minds and brains of our citizens to cope with the accelerating, dizzying rate of change that they face in their lives.
Your brain health is not fixed. Scientific discoveries prove it can adapt and grow regardless of your starting point.
Our greatest value, the asset that will help us to change everything, every problem we're in, is all in our head.
To harness that treasure, we must measure and monitor progress while things are going well versus waiting for an injury or disease to strike.
Too many of us are outliving our brains, and that does not have to be the case.
The information age is bombarding us with more content than our human brains can handle. How do you keep from getting lost in this? And focus on deep thinking. For starters, stop multitasking.
Science shows us that multitasking is bad for your brain. It reduces fluid intelligence, causes brain atrophy, and increases chronic stress.
The global pandemic is creating more stress than ever, stress that leads to depression and anxiety and beyond. Unlocking our potential to navigate these hurdles starts with learning the right strategies, even in school.
So when teachers have these strategies, they're empowered to support our learners, and then the learners are now able to take ownership of their learning.
Training kids how to think is doubling academic achievement among middle schoolers.
I think the greatest national security threat is pre-K through 12. If we don't take care of educating our young men and women, then we have to ask ourselves, where are we going to be in 20 years?
Our world-renowned scientists know you can increase your brain health, not lose it. It's time for a new category of health, brain health. You are a game changer. Ready to transform the world with us? Be a part of the brain health revolution. It starts here.
Welcome everybody. How are we doing tonight for Jen? We were just reminded that this is our 1-year anniversary of going virtual with Sips in Science. And I don't know if the crowd knows it, but we used to reach about 100 to 200 people for our monthly Sips in Science. And as we've gone virtual, we now have 10,000 registrants that have registered for our Sips in Science series. So for everyone who's joined us tonight, welcome. For everyone who's going to join us later, welcome when you look at us on the YouTube video later. Before Jennifer introduces our speakers, I just want to remind everybody that we are Center for Brain Health here at the University of Texas at Dallas, and we focus on brain health in a very different way. So we bring this monthly series to you to share in a common way some topics we think can benefit everybody. And I'm excited tonight to hear from two people who actually walk the walk. Bonnie Pitman and Dr. Julie Fratantoni. When you're talking about compassion and creativity, there aren't two better people to do it. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen and we'll get going.
Thanks, Steve, and welcome everybody. Welcome to those of you who are new and just joining us for the first time. And it's great to be with those of you who are return attendees. The Sips in Science, this series of talks The whole purpose is to bring science to the public, to make information accessible and to make it practical for you so that you can walk away with some things, learn something new every single time you come. And I agree, Steve could not be more right. Tonight, our talk on empowering creativity and compassion in a post-pandemic world. Now, we know we're still dealing with Delta, and we're kind of in the midst of things. But as we are coming through transition, compassion and creativity are more important than ever. I'm sure none of you found yourselves not having to be compassionate or not having to be creative over the past year and a half. And Steve, as I mentioned, said it so eloquently. Our speakers tonight, Bonnie Pitman and Dr. Julie Fratantoni, are certainly some of the most creative and most compassionate people that I have the pleasure and joy of working with. So I want to introduce them. Before I do, I just want to remind everybody, they're going to go through their talk and we're going to have Q&A at the end. So please put your questions into the Q&A. And usually we have so many questions, we can't get to everyone. So apologies, but know that everybody's reading everything that people are saying and we're trying to get to everybody. So without further ado, let me introduce our very distinguished speakers tonight. Bonnie Pitman, let's start with Bonnie. Bonnie is the Director of Art Brain Innovations at the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas at Dallas. And she teaches so many interesting classes on the art of observation, how it relates to medicine, meditation, compassion. She doesn't just work with the Center for Brain Health, she also serves in the Office of the Provost and the Edith O'Donnell Institute of Art History and in the School of Art and Technology. She's the former director of the Dallas Museum of Art, and she is a national leader and expert in the public engagement of art. Julie Fratantoni, Dr. Julie Fratantoni, fantastic. She's a research scientist with the Center for Brain Health and the head of operations for the BrainHealth Project, which you heard a little bit about. The BrainHealth Project is a longitudinal study, and we're always looking for participants, and so we'll be putting a plug in for that later. But Julie has spent a lot of her time not only doing research, but also translational work. She leads the Center for Brain Health's Kindness Enterprise, looking to uncover and harness the brain's capacity for kindness, empathy, and compassion. These are critical components of overall brain health and well-being. And we could not have two greater speakers tonight. It's so nice to have both Bonnie and Julie. And so without further ado, I am going to turn it over to you guys, and we look forward to tonight's talk.
Thanks, Jen. We are so excited to be here and to get to share more about this topic with everyone. So hopefully you all can see my screen. And let's just dive right in. So we have been thinking a lot about creativity and compassion, both that is part of our vocation, what we get to do for our job, but also just, as you said, over the last year, that these are skills and really tools that come in handy no matter what it is, pandemic or not, that creativity and compassion are really these essential ingredients, are really the essence of what makes us human and is unique to humans. And so no matter what life is throwing at you, these are going to be really important skills that we can always improve upon as well. So I'm going to be covering a lot of the neuroscience behind it, and Bonnie's going to talk about some real life practice and ways that you can implement these things and ideas into your life to really grow and boost these areas of your brain. All right. So starting off with a question, what is creativity? I think a lot of times, and since we do not have the chat active, I just want you to think about this to yourself. But I know that there's a lot of associations or assumptions that come with this idea of creativity, that it sort of gets categorized in the bucket of you have to be an artist. And so I just want to debunk that right from the get-go, that creativity is not just for artists. Creativity is really about an attitude of what is possible. And so it's all about thinking, how can we really participate in each moment? How can we really see infinite possibilities? And so this is one of the ways. There's kind of four main components when we think about creativity from a scientific lens and how we would measure that or even quantify it. And so the first one is fluency is a component of creativity, to be able to produce a great number of ideas in a short time frame. Flexibility, to be able to approach problems from multiple angles. Originality, producing novel ideas. And elaboration, being able to really organize those ideas and execute them. So these are four components, and we're going to be talking more. There are so many different paths that you can go down when it comes to creativity and different types. But this is just to give you kind of a base, a new vocabulary for thinking about what it means to be creative. It's not just that you're artistic or can paint or draw or dance or play an instrument, but really that being, coming up with multiple ideas, being original, thinking flexibly, and being able to execute on that plan and design is part of everyday life, and nearly every job requires these things. So getting into the brain science, what's going on in the brain when we are creative. So first of all, there's a few myths that are misconceptions that we need to set straight. So one of the biggest myths that we hear a lot is that there's a left brain, right brain, that the left brain is analytical and very detail oriented, and the right brain is the creative side. And I hate to break it to you, but there is no science to support this kind of single hemisphere view of creativity. Really, it is a whole brain event. And I love the way our friend Bruce Mao has said this of being whole brain creative is a talent and a skill. And truly, as I get into really sharing more about what's happening in the brain with creativity, I think you will see this. So where is it? Well, like I said, it's because creativity isn't one single thing, one single cognitive process. There's no specific creativity region. There's no spot or just single anatomical place. And it really requires the integration of a lot of highly distributed networks. So I'll share just a few with you. I don't want to overwhelm you, but I want to give you this sense of seeing how many different things come into play and how there's such an opportunity here to really grow and expand these skills. So what our brain is really good at is taking in information from the world around us and then turning that into action, movement, design, a plan. And what sets us apart from other animals is our frontal lobe. So you may hear this referred to as your prefrontal cortex as well, but our frontal lobe is what actually allows us to plan ahead, to think into the future beyond just immediate needs right now. We can make predictions, we can imagine other things. And so all these skills, prediction, planning, imagination, those are forms of creativity in a sense, in needing to generate different ideas, needing to imagine different possibilities. And so the frontal lobe is really good at that. The frontal networks are also really involved in just areas of general intelligence. You have to pull on knowledge in order to generate new ideas. So the frontal lobe is involved in that as well. And then we'll jump to another area, which a big part of creativity involves risk-taking. Part of trying out new ideas or coming up with new solutions, or even just painting a room a different color, right? There's a little bit of risk involved in that it may not turn out well. It may create more problems. You might have more things that you need, more problems you need to solve, but the reward system is very active in this. And so I'm not going to get too technical in terms of anatomy, but just want you to know that there's a lot of anatomical structures in the brainstem where dopamine is produced that are then sending, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter. Most of you may be familiar with this as the feel-good hormone, but this is what's released, and it's largely involved in motivation and really feeling rewarded after doing something. So this is a big part of creativity because it involves taking risks. And so with risks come reward, and hence the reward system is activated. So we've got our frontal lobe, we've got, that entire region, we've got this network of neurotransmitters. And again, neurotransmitters are just chemical messengers that help your neurons talk to each other and communicate, which is really important for this. So just starting off with these two. And now I want to jump into a little interaction. So I just want you to think to yourself, I'm presenting you with these three words: pine, crab, and sauce. And I want you to think of a word that goes with all three of them individually. So I'll give you a second to think about it. So I wish we had the chat function, but since we don't, I would say if anyone knows the answer, but I'm going to give it to you. So the answer is apple. And there's sort of two different ways that you could have gone about solving this problem. One is to just try a bunch of different words until you find one that works with all three. And then another way is sort of just with insight. And some of you may have experienced this, where the right word just sort of popped into your head. And so when it comes to this type of insight, this your anterior cingulate cortex is what's involved in that. So that's that feeling when you get the joke, you solve a puzzle, you have an aha moment. There was a study where they used that that type of word insight task that I just had you participate in, and what they saw right before those who solved the problem with insight, where it just popped into their head, there's increased activity in the anterior cingulate cortex. So another aspect of creativity and yet another part of the brain. All right, and so then now I want to share three major networks that are involved, and this isn't necessarily sequential, this is just how I'm going to present them. They're all different and work at different times, but they all go towards the same goal of helping you be creative. So the first one is the executive attention network, and I've labeled this one input because, like I said, in order to be creative, you have to take in information from the world around you and do something with it, and the way you do that is with attention. So the executive attention network is really important in this, and the network I've highlighted just general regions here, but things like your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, your orbitofrontal cortex, parietal cortex, anterior cingulate cortex, and really the main thing to know here is just that there's a lot of brain regions involved. This is definitely not a one hemisphere task to be able to pay attention. And then the second network I want to touch on is the default mode network. So default mode is sometimes referred to as the imagination network. We are in default mode network about 30% of our day. And this is good. This is a good thing. This is kind of daydreaming mode. This is where your brain is free to test creative possibilities, sort of uninhibited. And so a really good way, under normal circumstances, your executive attention network and your default mode network, they don't work together. It's like you're either, focused on something and paying attention, or you're letting your mind wander and kind of daydream. And under creatives are really good at shifting back and forth between the two. So that's something really interesting with how those work. And then the third one is the salience network, which I've labeled relevant because of the millions of pieces of information that your brain is processing. You have to be able to pick out what's important and, what's going to help me reach the goal or solve the problem or come up with a solution. And so the salience network is what monitors external and internal networks. So it's going to tag data basically as relevant or irrelevant. And then one way that your salience network and your executive attention network work together is that they handle error correction. And so another big part of solving a problem is kind of going through this process of consideration and deciding whether that idea makes sense or not, or fits with what you're trying to do. So I know this is a lot of information, but really your main takeaway from this is just that there are many networks involved doing a lot of different processes, everything from daydreaming to paying very specific focused attention to solving problems with insight, and it's involving your entire brain. All right, so how can creativity help to navigate change? Well, like we talked about, it's all about problem solving, finding innovative solutions, identifying options, really seeing things in a new way, reaching goals via a different route when you encounter obstacles. And so this is truly, it's kind of a combination of both convergent and divergent thinking. And then I want to give you a few tips for how you can specifically use some of the research that we've learned about the neuroscience of creativity to actually enhance your creativity. And one of those things that I think is really interesting is that it takes being in a good mood is actually one of the things that can enhance creativity. And I think the reason for this, it has to do with some of your neurotransmitters, so your neuropharmacy. When we feel anxious, you have increases in a neurotransmitter called norepinephrine. And what's interesting is that more creative people, or in studies, they found higher creativity was associated with reduced levels of norepinephrine. And that increased levels of norepinephrine may enhance communication between distributed networks. So, or rather, those reduced levels help the different networks talk. So that's important. So basically, not being anxious and being in a good mood is going to help your brain to do what it wants to do. And then ways to enhance your good mood are things like exercise, getting enough sleep, practicing mindfulness, practicing gratitude. Even humor is a good one. They did one study where they had people either watch like an informational clip, or they watched a clip of comedy of, you know, someone telling jokes, and then had them do a creative task. And the ones that had watched the comedy actually produced more ideas than the ones that just got straight information. So being in a good mood is very conducive to creativity. Sleep is a big one, because a very important part of being creative is this incubation period. And so when you sleep is when your brain puts together and consolidates memory and brings together information that seems unrelated, but combines it in new ways. And so a lot of times you'll hear, you know, Nobel Prize winners or people, they found their solution, it was in a dream or in their sleep, or they woke up with it. And so there's a lot happening in sleep. And so that's really important. And also being well rested is going to put you in a good mood. And then the third one that I have for you is spending time in nature. So this hits on a few things. One is that being away from everything, breaking up the normal pace of life is important. This also helps with that incubation period of kind of allowing your mind to just wander and kind of marinate on an idea. And then just kind of breaking up your routine, but also exploring the world. So you're having more input really to draw from when it comes to trying to come up with ideas. And so I hope that you'll see through everything that I described that, again, creativity is not just for artists, but it is for everyone. And I'm going to pass it to Bonnie, and she's going to tell you more about that.
Thank you, Julie. What a great gift you've given all of us to realize that we are all creative in our daily lives. And what she's emphasized is that creativity allows us to view the world and solve problems openly and with innovation, to really look at what is possible. And you can see that in the two images that I selected here. One is the upper image is a series of handprints from a prehistoric cave painting in Argentina. And even 10,000 years ago, individuals wanted to decorate their surrounding area. They wanted to emphasize their presence, and they were clearly joyful in this creative act. Down below, you see a man building. I don't know whether it's a house or something he's making for furniture, but this notion that every creativity is an everyday activity, and it is a mind-body activity. It is something that you produce something out of these new ideas. There are many, many people who have different jobs. And Julie, the next slide, please. We're going to look at three definitions of creativity by three very different people. The balance, each one of them, and I'm going to let you read their definitions, but my point here is that they balance intense energy with quiet rest for their practice. They are playful and they are knowledgeable. They love to deal with fantasy and yet have to deal with the reality of whether it's creating a new company, meeting the deadlines for writing poetry and poems for her books, or whether Albert Einstein came up with another life-changing idea that changed the world around us. As Julie pointed out in her neuroscience presentation, it takes the whole brain to support these enterprises. And all of the networks that she talked about, the three different networks, collectively produce creative thought. It is not just one thing. As we look ahead, next slide, to creativity, I want to emphasize that everyday life can be a practice in creativity. we don't have to be writing novels or creating a masterpiece. It is the time that we take to create meals, to set our table, to care for our children. It's the time that we make messes, whether it's in your man cave or in your garage, or when you're walking down by the lakes. It's the time that you take to think about life with curiosity, creativity, imagination, and exploration. It is not one simple thing. It is the opening of your life to awe and wonder, and then taking action with it that makes a huge difference for creative people. And you are one of them. As we look ahead, there are many, what does it take to have a creative practice? And what I did is I went around and interviewed a number of friends, and you might wonder why I have all these objects on the other side. And I'm wondering if you can see things that connect them. This was one of my, I'll talk about this at the end, but my friends who were artists and non-artists all said to me very similar things. Do what you love, do your passion. That will inspire you to be creative. Take time to practice and to dedicate a space and a period of your day. It could be 10 minutes, as Julie explained early on, in writing out new solutions for ideas. Take a break. It is okay to rest and nap and refocus the brain. Focus on the process rather than the output or the product that you're coming up with. This is important because you'll make mistakes, and mistakes lead to discoveries. And every artist, every creative person that you look to, that you say, gosh, you seem so creative to me, I am not creative. The first thing they'll tell you is, nope, I make mistakes, and those mistakes are what lead me to new understandings. I love collecting things that inspire me, and that was what was going on over here in the photograph. I went around and photographed my house with blue, all the objects of blue in it. And there are about 56 photographs that I took that day, but it was amazing to me to learn how embracing this color is in my house and how prevalent it was. The best part of being creative, as Julie also noted, was that you need to have fun and be playful and be joyful. It's a mindset, and it's also a way of living. I have a practice that I started 11 years ago. I'm now in my 11th year. And some of you have probably heard me give a talk about my Do Something New practice. It's a really good example of going to bed after learning very difficult and depressing news from my physician, and after I took that nap, I woke up because I wrote down my practice. And on July the 8th, 2011, I said, I'm going to do something new every day. I'm going to take an ordinary day and make it extraordinary through the power of intention. And I said, I can go to new places. Can you go back, Julie? Thanks. Places, I can have new experiences. I can meet new people. They can't be, it could be big or little things. I can do new experiences with my friends. And most of all, I can have new flavors of ice cream. As I went through this, the next slide shows you that today is day 3,668. I've done this for I've just started my 11th year, and I've done 3 to 5 experiences every day and record them in my Instagram and Facebook posts. So if you want to follow that, we'll give you the taglines at the end. It's been a wonderful journey for me, and one that has kept my mind active, helped me to fight off depression as a result of medical conditions, to be more resilient, and to have fun. So I'm going to give you a few very practical examples of doing something new. One of the things, when I was in the practice, I began to realize that once we went into lockdown, that the world had not stopped. I realized very quickly that the sun was shining, that love had not been canceled, friendships had not been canceled. Naps were definitely not canceled. I don't know about you, but I took a lot of them. Kindness was not canceled, and you could find ways to act on that in a new way. Art was not canceled, and I explored a lot on the internet. And most importantly, hope was not canceled. I woke up each day and asked myself, what am I grateful for? And you can see some simple examples. My friends getting the vaccine, which I encourage everybody to do, going to a new installation by an artist down at the Nasher Center, where he installed this fabulous new work, being with my kitty who sleeps by my desk every day, and how grateful I was to reach out and just feel his warm fur, or even learning how to make those wonderful designs that they do when you go to the coffee shop. I was grateful for this and countless more. Another thing I began to ask myself is, where is beauty in my life, especially when you're home alone? Well, the blue exercise is one that I did. I took different colors and photographed the house. I also began to look at simple things like the arrangement of my nectarines in the summertime, and looked at the Cezanne drawings. He does a beautiful still lifes, and Cezanne and Matisse love peaches. And so I really got into that and brought back my art history. I was fortunate enough to go to the Nasher Sculpture Center and help to prepare some lectures using Joel Shapiro, and began to see his work in brand new ways. I love flower arrangements, and so as the seasons passed, the flowers changed. I began to look for new ways to see familiar things, and here we are back at the Nasher with the Hepworth. Or one day, I was invited down to the Symphony Hall, and I had never been in it without people, and began to notice these sweeping arcs that I.M. Pei, the architect, had created for us. The next question I asked myself is, am I going outside today? And I tried to make that a regular part of my daily life. And the important thing to me was to, as Julie said, it's so important to get outside because nature revives us. But I began to focus in on details, the barks of birch trees. I began to look up at the clouds and became do a series of cloud studies, look down at the pansies that were growing in the spring, and spend a lot of time walking along Turtle Creek near where I live. Getting outside is really critical. That's probably Perseus that you see. Perseus, I'm so sorry. What my new flavors of ice cream are one of my favorite aspects of my Do Something New. And by this time, I've had thousands of flavors of ice cream over the years. Very importantly, during the pandemic, friends would arrive having enjoyed it themselves, because many of my friends could go out. And this was a gift from a dear friend who sent me, arrived in a frozen box from Calderon here in Dallas, a new ice cream store. So always time for ice cream is my belief. The next slide we're looking at is, I woke up many days and said, how can I be creative? It's a question we all have for ourselves, but it's simple ways. I enjoyed flower making and arrangements and documenting the way the tulips and other flowers blossomed and died. Every week on Friday, I cooked new recipes that I had never cooked before. Some of them were fabulous, and I really enjoyed that part. I can highly recommend this bean soup in the New York Times. And some of them were perfectly awful and ended up being destroyed. I also learned a great deal from my grandchildren. That's little Clark, and we learned how to play chess over Zoom. So that was a really fun activity to do with both of my grandchildren. As we move ahead, we ask you today to take a few minutes to write down how you will be creative. And with this, I'm going to begin to turn the program back to Julie.
All right, thank you, Bonnie. So we are going to pivot to compassion. And I think compassion and even creativity sometimes feel like just extras or nice to haves. And so I love this quote from the Dalai Lama that says, "Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive." And so truly we saw the need for human connection, social interaction, just being around people that we didn't get during the pandemic. And so I think it's important to touch on compassion, that no matter really what state the world is in, that this is something that is really essential for human flourishing. So we want to define compassion. Sharon Salzberg gives a really nice definition of this and says that compassion is the feeling that arises when we are confronted with another's suffering and feel motivated to relieve that suffering. So I want to introduce, actually, before I jump into that, when it comes to your brain is not just in isolation from the rest of your body, right? It's deeply interconnected in nearly every way. There's constantly information coming in from your senses that your brain's processing, and then also your brain is sending signals to your body. And so there are two, so your brain is part of your nervous system. And I want to talk about two systems today that you may be familiar with, but it's the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. So parasympathetic, I'm going to refer to as this rest or calm. Sympathetic is this more alert or stressed. The sympathetic nervous system is often referred to as fight or flight, kind of gets a bad rap as fight or flight, but really we need both of these systems. So if you think about the things you need to do throughout your day, for example, sympathetic nervous system is going to help you wake up in the morning. You're going to get a burst of cortisol and adrenaline. That's what helps you move from sleep to wakefulness. And then the opposite, at night, you need to go from wakefulness to sleep. So parasympathetic needs to increase a little bit. And then various cycles throughout the day while you're awake. And truly as a culture, we tend to run around pretty highly caffeinated and very much stimulating our sympathetic nervous system. So we're constantly a little bit alert and stressed. And so the parasympathetic nervous system is going to help bring balance because, like I said, both systems are important, and finding balance is a good thing. So don't get overwhelmed by this graphic. You don't need to understand every piece of it, but the point is that your brain is communicating with with every organ in your body. And so when it comes to parasympathetic, for your eyes, for example, when you're relaxed, your pupil constricts, your heart rate slows down, your stomach is tuned up to stimulate digestion. The opposite, when you're in your stressed or fight or flight or sympathetic mode, your pupils are going to dilate, your heart rate's going to accelerate, and your stomach is going to inhibit digestion because your blood flow needs to go to your muscles to prepare for fight or flight. So really everything we're doing in our brain as we interact with the world and even as we internally regulate is affecting all of these body systems. So I want to touch on one paper here that is from Kim and colleagues that was published last year. And specifically, this study assessed the neural responses when participants were confronted with disappointments like rejection or failure. Or even, I think this could apply to isolation or being alone. And so using, they compared two different self-regulatory styles, one being self-criticism and one being self-reassurance. And they did, for the self-reassurance, it was compassion training. And so they identified basically that with compassion training, it increased the networks associated with parasympathetic activity. So it brought this more rest, calm state than compared to those who were practicing more of a self-critical mindset, that was invoking more of that fear and stress response. They also looked at, with this increased parasympathetic rest response, they saw changes in heart rate variability versus resting state. And heart rate variability is just a measure of the difference in between each heartbeat, and that you want greater variability there, basically showing that your heart as a muscle has that flexibility to adapt. Being more rigid is associated with some different health outcomes. And so I just thought this was interesting to be able to show specifically the brain activity that was identified to see when they were practicing more of this self-reassurance, self-compassion, and being able to really regulate in response to something like rejection or failure, and how that was able to actually increase parasympathetic activity. And so I want to touch on a few more of the far-reaching effects of when you have strong social support, when you experience compassion in your life, when you have these just good social engagement, that it shows that there's less cardiovascular reactivity. So again, your heart is healthier, your immune system is stronger, so your body can produce more natural killer cells, these cells that, fight cancer, that fight off illness. It's also associated with longevity. So practicing compassion, having strong relationships, people live longer. If you look at areas of the world that are identified as blue zones, where people live to be 100 routinely and are still healthy and active and involved in their community, you see a lot of this strong social support is one of the main factors in that. And then, of course, when it comes specifically to the brain, you see decreased depression and anxiety, better sleep, less cognitive decline with aging. So there's a lot of really protective brain benefits to having strong social support and honing and practicing compassion. And so a few tips from the science of how to boost compassion. One of them is mindfulness. So I talked about the importance of this balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic activity. And mindfulness is one that's really good at increasing your parasympathetic to help regulate the two. This also helps regulate emotion. So when you regulate emotion, you're able to be more calm, and your limbic system, your emotional brain systems can calm down so that your frontal lobe can come online and you can think and reason and make decisions and not say things you regret, and truly be more compassionate. Perspective taking is a really important one. This is tapping into flexibility that comes with creativity, but also the ability to really see someone else's perspective, put yourself in their shoes, imagine what it's like to be them. And good ways to exercise or strengthen this is, one, to interact with lots of different people, have friends, have conversations, get to know people that are very different from you. And if you don't have the opportunity to do that, or you're in quarantine, literature is a great way to do that. So reading books, finding authors, people that you may otherwise not get to meet but can sort of get a glimpse into their head, and that will definitely boost compassion. Exercise, so anytime, again, you can self-regulate, de-stress, have those endorphins to be in a good mood. When we're in a good mood, we're more likely and better able to be compassionate towards ourselves and towards others. And same with sleep. We know that when people are sleep deprived, you actually see decreases in empathy or lack of empathy. And so sleep's important, not only to be able to practice empathy, but to just regulate yourself, to be in a good mood, and again, to be able to show up for the people in your life that you come across. And I'll pass it back to Bonnie.
Thanks, Julie. You've given us great reasons about why we should be involved in compassionate acts, because it's so helpful for our brains, just like creativity is. I just want to spend a moment talking about this important concept that compassion is contagious. The more you practice compassion, other people will begin to follow your example. There are great stories about people buying coffee for one another, and they keep, even though one person does that, then the whole chain of people in the store begin to follow that by suit. We're inspired by these acts of kindness, and we like to make choices that make a difference, and they can, when things that we can do through our activity rather than always using words. The COVID pandemic has been a constant reminder every day that we are living in an interconnected world. In a short period of time, the virus spread across the oceans and the invisible borders that make up our world, causing most human civilization to be in some form of quarantine or isolation. And while we're all hopeful that this would be ending soon, I'm not so sure with the new variants that are coming across us. We find ourselves adapting every day to the new normal, and compassion is one of the ways that we can be helpful to ourselves and to others and to the world around us. So let me explain a little bit more. What are the elements of compassion? The word itself, compassion, comes from Latin and Greek, and it means to suffer with. Very important, to suffer with the person. It is more than recognizing suffering. It is experiencing suffering at a new level. And I think there's nothing as meaningful as this beautiful sculpture at the Nasher Sculpture Center of a mother holding her crying baby. That is, when parents hear that cry, they will do anything they can to comfort the child. So it's that recognizing of suffering and trying to take a response. It's understanding that it is a universal experience. Everyone suffers. And it is a human experience. It's also the experience, of course, of animals. And we can do something to help each other and to help ourselves. It's a feeling that is for a person that is both emotional and physical and tries to connect with their distress. And very importantly, what distinguishes compassion from empathy? Empathy being, I understand the feelings that you have, the sadness, the suffering, the loss of your parent or your child, or the distress in your work, to really taking action about trying to alleviate that suffering. Whether it's one person or a dozen people in your daily life, you can do it. So you might ask yourself, how can I be compassionate? I'm going to give you some wonderful examples. First, listen, be fully present, put that phone down. Pay attention, look in the eyes of the person that you're talking to, listen deeply to what they need and what they are saying. Be kind. Being kind does not take money. It takes acts of moving through the world with an open mind and more importantly, a loving heart. And you can do it with family, friends, strangers. They are all there. Smiling, saying hello, opening a door, buying a cup of coffee, bringing flowers. These are all acts of simple kindness. Be helpful. I have a neighbor who's 105 years old who lived next door to me and became my best friend during the pandemic. Since we could really just see each other, we didn't see anybody else. So it was important for me to begin to anticipate what she needed. One was Mary John has a great sweet tooth, so it was a great excuse for me to bring cookies that I baked and other things to her doorstep. Practice is important. As Julie pointed out, you can learn to be more compassionate. And the way you do that is by practicing acts of kindness and seeing how people respond to you. My granddaughter, Franny, one day called and said, I have an idea, Nana. I want to raise money for Feeding America, which is a national charity that is taking care of people who have not enough food. So she said, I'm going to have a Zoom bake sale to raise this money. She came up with the idea. She posted, as you can see, her notes online. And from 6:20 to 6 o'clock one afternoon, she was online answering questions why this was important and raised several $100s. You can be 6 years old or 4 years old or 105 years old and be compassionate. We all have this special gift. Everyone you meet is fighting the issues of, oh, how can you be compassionate? I'm sorry, this is really important. And I want to stop for just a moment and pause on this. If we were in an auditorium and I was to ask yourself, how many of you are compassionate with yourself? Truly, only a few small hands would go up. If I asked you how many people are compassionate for others, lots of hands would go up, probably everybody in the room. And if I asked, are you compassionate for living things, for the trees and the plants and your friends and everything around you, lots of hands would go up. what we forget is that self-compassion is one of the most important things that you can exercise. And Julie made some points of this in her neuroscience explanation. I love this quote from the Dalai Lama. It's another one to follow up on one you've already heard. He said, if you want to be happy, practice compassion for others. If you want to be happy, practice compassion for yourself. Self-compassion is a way in which you can involve yourself in letting go of those negative attitudes that you have, that self-talk. I didn't do enough. I didn't exercise. I made a mistake. All of those things that are that we notice and tolerate, all of that stress and distress that comes into your life. There are lots of studies and wonderful books out there that talk about this need to reduce self-criticism, painful emotions, and the psychological difficulties of stress and depression. If you can learn to be self-compassionate, which is the basis of compassion, then you can be more compassionate for others. So I want to emphasize the importance of learning to love yourself, forgive yourself, and be kind to yourself. Take time, as my mother would say, to smell those roses and enjoy simple things. Reach out to your friends, hold hands, pet your cats, do the things you love. And then compassion for and from others will come. I spend a lot of time needing help from others. And so in my daily life, being aware of their gifts to me makes me more mindful of the gifts I need to give to them, to be interested in their lives and to connect with them, to mend relationships that you may have compromised, to foster love and empathy with each other. It is so important because it gives that desire to relieve suffering and imbues us with a desire to be helpful. Compassion for all living things, sorry, Julie, we're almost done, is my favorite thing in when I practice my metta or my loving kindness meditation, which Sharon Salzberg teaches. Compassion for all living things, especially these days when we turn on the news and we see the fires and disasters, the spread of COVID, social injustice, we can become overwhelmed. But our gift is that we are born into a world that can be, and we can nurture that world to be a better place. We can give and we can receive, but in giving, we share the resources of sentient beings and animal rights and activism. You can contribute, you can march, you can do things that help, you can plant those trees and help to make the air greener and support each other. I love when I do my metta, my meditations, when I get to the thinking about the world around me, there's a sense of peace and kindness that comes over me that is unlike anything else. And I encourage all of us to think about the interconnectedness of world and our place in it. The next slide talks about us, about all of the, everyone you meet is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. And that battle is you can make a change by being kind. Always be kind. It's a chance for you to pause and be intentional in your actions, to ask yourself, how can I do something for someone else? And how can I do something for myself? It's a way of opening doors and asking questions that is part of your creative activities that suddenly comes to light in caring for humanity and in all ways. As we go ahead and begin to reflect and consider the need for tools, and Julie and I wanted to find a fun way to bring the two aspects of our talk, creativity and compassion, together. We want to remind you that it may seem like a tall order, but it's not. Research strongly suggests, which Julie has presented, that compassion and creativity can be learned. They are They are building blocks for our emotional stability and creativity. They are a way to lead us to action and for caring for the world around us. And some of the things that we've talked about in both activities, both creativity and compassion, are the need to practice every day or as frequently as you can. The recognition that we make mistakes and you can go back and make amends, or you can learn from your discoveries. That loving what you do and taking joy in being creative and loving the world around you makes a difference. We will all face adversity, and we have to learn these tools are both ways in which you can face that adversity, as we all did through the pandemic, which is not over, and we can begin to flower in new ways. We are vulnerable because we're human beings, and that vulnerability can sprout into new ways of thinking about the world around us. Very important, be patient with yourself. Patience is a gift that can give you the resilience to come back and try again. As we look at these our closing remarks, I just want to remind you that there are no excuses. You have 1,440 minutes every day, and every day you can embrace creativity and you can embrace compassion. Make it a promise to yourself, because your brain will be happier and healthier if you do that. Julie, take it over and help us to learn more about the Brain Health Project.
Sure. So I love your point about having 1,400 minutes each day, that there are so many opportunities for us to practice things like compassion and creativity, but also all these different ways that we can strengthen our brain so that it is healthy and performing optimally for our entire lifespan. And so we are doing a longitudinal research study, a 10-year study called the Brain Health Project. And our whole goal of this project is really to teach you tools, to teach you how your brain works and how you can use it better. And so exactly the types of things that Bonnie and I were talking about tonight are the types of training modules that are available through the project. So basically, as part of the project, you get access to doing online assessments or online training, and you even get your very own online brain health coach. So that's a personalized one-on-one session with part of our research team, and they're going to help you set goals and keep you motivated. So if you're looking for some more inspiration, or you want to learn more about your brain, or you need ideas or just encouragement to do that, definitely you want to be part of the project. And so you can scan the QR code. It'll take you right to this web address here, the Brain Health Project. And then I also want to mention that we have a special pilot we're doing right now. If you are a male, ages 18 to 40, we need your brain. We want to take pictures of it for imaging. And so this is a special opportunity. If you meet that criteria, you can fill out an interest form at this link here and get more information on that. And then I lastly just want to mention ways to keep in touch with Bonnie and I are here. Always reach out. We love to hear from you. And now we have a few minutes left for questions, and I'll pass it back to Steve and Jen.
Thank you so much, you guys, both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, Jen's going to look up a couple of questions. I just wanted to give a couple of takeaways because I've actually participated separately in a couple of the programs Bonnie has done. Her Do Something New practice and her Power of Observation. And when you hear a statement like stop and smell the roses, don't take it lightly. You really do form a whole new appreciation for learning how to slow your brain down, appreciating the little things. And this isn't just about feeling good. It actually is good for your brain architecture. And that's what was just overwhelming to me, is knowing these little simple acts can re-architect your brain. You can become more compassionate. You can become more creative. You can become more kind. So it's a superpower once you recognize how plastic your brain is and how you can start remolding it at any age. So take that to the bank. We're all gifted with that superpower, and put it into practice, and you'll see the difference.
Absolutely. Awesome. Okay, Julie, would you please put up the QR scan again, the QR code, sorry.
Yeah. Let me get back to that slide.
So that has been a request, and then we'll leave that up for a little bit, and then your contact information to follow, if you'll post that again. I wanted to ask, there's been some questions just kind of about this idea of like, what is the impact? I'd love for you very briefly to talk about the impact of gratitude, both on creativity and compassion.
Right. Well, gratitude is one of the discoveries that I learned in my Do Something New practice, that waking up in the morning and say, it's amazing that I am here, and then going through the day, and many times I chronicle all the amazing things that happened to me because I'm just so grateful to be here. Gratitude is very important in self-compassion, learning how to be grateful to yourself and grateful to the world, to those around you, is also just, it's an action, and it is a recognition of self-care as well as loving, as we talked about in creativity. When an artist is finally finished, and I always wonder how they decide, when am I done? Or when is that soup that you've made for the third time, is this really the way you want it to be? Those are recognitions of very simple things in your daily life that can be grateful acts. So gratitude is important, really important to making change and to celebrating the world that you're in, which is part of what creativity and compassion are all about.
Fabulous. What about extroverts or introverts? Differences with like extroverts and introverts. Introverts seem to take a lot of energy to like form these kinds of connections and do all this work. Is there really a difference? And Julie, are there like brain differences?
It's a really good question. I don't know if there are brain differences between introverts and extroverts, but I will say that just like everything with the brain, like diet, like exercise, there is no one size fits all. So what is going to be the right amount of social support and interaction for me is going to be very different than what it is for Jen. So I think it's really about self-awareness, knowing your sweet spot, knowing, you know, not all social interaction is created equal. So there are some people that might be more draining. We're talking about quality relationships with people you trust, people that know you and love you and that you feel free to be yourself around. And so for me, like my cup, like I'm an introvert and my cup is full, just, you know, having dinner with one or two friends. Right. And I meet that, but I think it's truly just being known, being loved, having those core people you can count on in time of need, having people to have fun with, and making sure that that's prioritized in your life. I think when we get really busy, those are some of the first things to go, that it's like, oh, I don't have time to grab coffee, or I don't have time to, you know, meet up with this person for lunch. And so I think really just recognizing the value that, you know, is it better, the trade-off between, oh, getting to my workout class, or like when actually the better thing might be to go have dinner with my close friend, that's going to be equally as there's going to be health benefits to that, to have that social support. So,
and let me mention that we have an entire program focused on folks with social challenges, because whether you're part of a neurodiverse population where there is a diagnosed difference in your brain or brain chemistry, or if you just have severe social challenges, look up our Charisma platform, because, you know, we do treat a broad range of people. And I don't want to say treat, I want to say coach, because it really is empowering these folks with these strategies and tools. So our SMART tools can apply across quite a wide group of people, young and old, those that are neurodiverse, and those that are otherwise generally healthy brained. So there's my foray into science, Jennifer, before I go too deep. We're getting near the top of the hour, so I'm going to let you wrap up, but I'm going to remind people, listen, we're part of the University of Texas at Dallas, and we are a not-for-profit. So none of this is possible without your support. None of the research is possible without your support. So I would just overtly ask, if you found this of value, please feel free to donate. You can do that when you go to the Center for BrainHealth.org, and invite friends to this, right? The more people we can reach and communicate with, we want to spread our message. So it's not always about asking for money. It is important for us, but it's also asking for your support. And we'd love to have it and for you to bring your friends and family to these sorts of things. Jen, I'll let you wrap it up.
You bet. I think it's so exciting. I've been at the Center for Brain Health for, I don't even want to admit how long, over 20 years. And I think that the growing interest in brain health, performance, and how do we strengthen through so many different components is not only important, but it's so compelling for people. And so Bonnie and Julie, thank you both so much for talking about the science and even practical tools. Hopefully everyone tonight was able to walk away with at least one aha insight. Remember your crab sauce and tree, what happens in your brain when you're like, ooh, I should do that. I could do that. There were lots of ideas, I think, that got sparked tonight. And I think there was one question, I'm not going to ask you guys to answer it, but for people who think like, should I be worried about people who say they don't have imagination? I would just challenge everybody to think we can develop and we can practice. And so I think that the more that you engage and seek out opportunities to do that, the better. And so thank you, Julie and Bonnie. Compassion and creativity are critical now more than ever, but always. And thank you everybody for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks, Julie. Thanks for everyone out there supporting us. Y'all have a great, compassionate, and kind evening.
Good night.